Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this tutorial for game scripting in Lua. A quick note, this tutorial is meant for the game creation students from the Saxion University in Enschede, because we're going to use a custom-made game engine called the GXP engine. So if you do not have access to that game engine, then this tutorial might not be that helpful. So again, this is meant for the game creation students from Saxion University. Before we start, a couple of things about the engine itself. The engine will always look for a file called game.lua. If it cannot be found, then the engine will not work, or it might even crash. So keep that in mind. So if you have your game that's called My First Awesome Epic Game, the Lua, it won't load because it will look for the game.lua file. Second, I've got my game.lua open. Make sure that you went to project and then project directory and set from current file, otherwise it will not work from the current or from the correct file. And also make sure that the Lua interpreter is set to tiled game, otherwise it will use a different game engine and therefore might not work. Well, it probably will not work, so keep that in mind before we actually start. So this is a combination between Zero Brain Studio and tiled or tiled. The Zero Brain Studio is our script editor and tiled is our level editor. As you can see, this is the default level that came with the engine. Also note that the date or the year of this video is 2015. So the game engine itself might have changed by the time you watch this video, so that's something to keep in mind. So some things might have changed, something might have been added to the actual game engine. So now when I play my game, it's empty because there is nothing in there at all. So the first thing I want to do is I want to load my level. In this case it's called game.tmx. I want to load this in my game engine. So on line 1 I'm gonna say level.load, which means that I will load a level with a file name. In this case we're gonna use a string game.tmx. Note these two quotation marks. They pretty much say that everything in between these quotation marks is considered a text, simple plain text, or better known as a string. So we lowered in the game.tmx, and now when I play you actually get the level in front of you, but we can't control it yet because there's nothing added to it. So the game engine uses two main functions, or two predefined functions. One of them is function start, note the capital S, and a function called update. Again, note the capital U. In Lua it's very important that you end your functions, and you can do so by just simply typing in end. Mind blowing. But the placement of those ends is actually very important. For example, when I place this end over here on line 11, then the function update is now inside the function start, as you can see. That's bad, let me put it that way. It simply won't work that way. So make sure that the placement of the ends is correct. Okay, so we got the main function start and update. The function start is run once the game is started, so it just loads it once, and function update is run every single frame. So for example, my game runs at 4000 frames per second, then this function update is also run 4000 times per second. Okay, so we got the basic setup, and now we actually want to start coding something. So the first thing I want to do is I want to load my player, in this case our little friend called Taco. I want to load him in. So first thing I have to do is I have to declare that the player actually exists in the code. So I'm up here, I'm gonna type player is and then curly brackets. So what this does is that it makes a table. And a table is nothing more than a giant box in which you can put stuff in. For example, I can actually draw a picture for him. Let's just draw a picture. Let's just make it pretty big. Let's do like 2000 by 2000. Okay. So a table, you can see it as a giant box. Giant box. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Giant box in which you can place your objects in. Beautiful box, I know, gorgeous. So this is our player box, and in that box, for example, we can put multiple or different items in. For example, the player has a health, maybe the player has a score or the player has speed. You can place those different attributes in this tiny box, so you can actually add more boxes in here. That's maybe this one is the speed, for example, or maybe this one is the actual health of our player. So it just keeps things a little bit more organized, a little bit easier to overview the entire project. Otherwise you get a giant list of just names like player health, player speed, player whatever. It's just annoying to work with. So hence we create a table, beautiful drawing by the way, I know, in which we can place multiple objects. So this is, for example, the health, this is the speed, and this is the, I don't know what, you name something. So this is just a bit more organized. Okay, so the first thing I want to load is the actual player itself. The player itself is an object, so I'm going to create a object called object, and I'm going to call it nil. The reason why I call it nil, because I want to load it by code, and by now on line 5 I don't know what it is yet. I know that I want to use it at some point, but I don't know what it is, so therefore I could just call it nil, so it's empty, so I can still fill it in later on. Okay, so loading in a player, well, then the question is, how often do you want to do it? Do you want to do it in function start, so just once, or do you want to load the player every single frame? Last one sounds like a very bad idea, so I just want to load it once. I just want the player to load once, and that's it. So in my function start up here, I'm going to say player dot object. So the dot indicates that the object here, the object, is part of the table called player. Then I'm going to say level dot get object, because it's only one object, and then I'm going to say play with a capital P. Well, why a capital P? Well, when I look in my level, I can actually find a player here, and it has a name called player. It's in Dutch, but this says name. So this name here should match the one in your code, otherwise it simply won't work. Cool. Now when I play, I've got my player loaded, but I still can't control it, because we haven't actually told the game engine that we want to control our player. Okay, then again the question is, do you want to be able to control it just once at start, or do you want to control it every single frame? I kind of want to do it every single frame, otherwise what's the point? So in my update function, I'm going to say here moved is controller.wasd, and then the object and the float speed. So the first one is, what do you want to control? Well, I want to control my player object. And then with what speed do you want to control your object? I'm gonna say something like 4. Okay, so let's play it again, and now I can actually move my object, my player, with my WASD keys. Cool. But there's a problem. When I now go off screen, I go off screen entirely, and you can't see it anymore, because the camera currently has a fixed position, and I kind of wanted to follow the player itself. So right now it's not doing that. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a new function. I'm going to call it function, and then I'm going to call it do camera, and make sure that you end it. Okay. So in this function, I want the camera to follow our player. So I'm going to type camera dot follow, and then it says object followee. So what object do you want the camera to follow? Well, I want the camera to follow the player object. Done. I'm gonna play, and it's not working. It actually makes sense, because we just made it, but it's never executed, because the only functions that are executed all the time is function update and start. So we actually have to tell the game engine itself, okay, dude, I want you to execute the function do camera. But do I want to do this once at start, or do I want to do it every single frame? Well, I kind of want the camera to follow my player around every single frame. So in here, the update, I'm going to type in do camera, exactly the way as I typed it here. So now every frame this function is executed. So every frame it's going to run this line that says camera follow the object. So now when it's up playing, you can actually see that the camera starts following it around, which is exactly what we want. Keep in mind, when you create a new function, you have to make sure that it's actually executed either in start or in update. Cool, so we got the game running, but what's a game without an enemy? Or enemies, that would be even cooler, right? So I'm gonna spawn them. That sounds badass. So I'm gonna create a function down here. Now I'm gonna call it spawn enemies. End. I call it enemies because I want to spawn multiple enemies. If I just want to spawn one, I would call it enemy. So naming your functions is actually very important. Because for example, I could call this my first function is awesome, but then the next person will have no idea what it means. So make sure that the function names actually make sense. They have a logical name and they are a short description of what they are going to do. In this case, it's going to spawn enemies. Okay, so the spawning of the enemies is actually done by the level. I'm going to say level.spawn, and then it asks for a whole bunch of stuff. So first it's going to ask for the name of the object that you're going to spawn, then the ID, and then the X, Y, and the trigger. What? So let's just go through it. So first thing it's going to ask for is the string name. So I'm going to name it enemy because I want every object that I'm going to spawn is called enemy. Then it asks for a number ID. Well, that ID corresponds with the object in your tile. In this case, let's click on this bush over here. It says 46. So every time this function is executed, it's going to spawn an enemy with the name enemy and with this image or this image or this image. But I kind of want to have the bush, so I'm going to use the number ID of 46. So every time it spawns that image. Then you can set the X and Y coordinates. So first one is X and then Y. So you can, for example, 10 and 10. So X10, Y10. And then last there's a trigger. I'm going to call it nil for now. Okay, so it's now spawned them. Oh wait, we forgot to actually call the function. So we haven't called it here. Now do you want to spawn a enemy every single frame? Sounds like a very, very bad idea. So we could do it just once. We could do it in start. It would just spawn one enemy. It will spawn in there. Cool. But what if you want to spawn more than just one? Or maybe you want to spawn them every like 2 seconds. That would be even cooler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a timer. So timer.start, and this will execute a function every number of interval. So in this case it says string name, so it asks for the name of the function as a string. So it's spawn enemies. I'm going to copy it, add quotation marks, and spawn enemies. Then it's asked for the number of interval, so on how many seconds do you want it to execute it, like 1 second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds. I'm going to say 2, and then it asks for bool repeat. A boolean is either true or false. There's no other options, it's true or false. In this case, do you want it to loop or not? So do you want this function to be executed every 2 seconds or just once? In this case, I want it to execute every 2 seconds. I'm going to set it to true. That means it will loop every 2 seconds. So it should now spawn every 2 seconds an enemy. There's one. There should be another one, but you can't see it because they spawn on top of each other. Okay, so we kind of want them to move as well. That'd be cool. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create another new function. In this case, I'm gonna call a function do enemies. End. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get all my enemies from my level. So I'm going to type here enemies is level.get objects, and then with the string name enemy, the same way spelled as I did here in the spawn enemies function. So this should match. Okay, so I get all my enemies, but there are multiple ones. So I have to go through a list of all the enemies that are currently in my level. So the way I can do this is by using a loop, in this case a for loop. So I'm going to type here for I is 1, hashtag enemies, do. So I'm just going to type it and then I'll just explain it. Then I'm going to say enemy is controller dot control enemies I5. Okay, so what this does, this is I. I stands for iterator. So it's a number that will just keep adding like 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Hashtags enemies means that it will look for all the enemies that are currently in our level. So if this is 2, it will run this twice. If you have 16,000 enemies, it will just keep on going till it reaches 16,000. So this just means that it goes through all the enemies that are currently in my level. So for I is 1, so currently I is 1, go through all the levels, do, and that means it's gonna add a patrol controller to every single enemy that it comes through in the list. So enemies I, so what is this is actual an array. Let me just make a pretty picture again. Let's make a new one. So we got our array of enemies, right? So we got enemy and enemies. Beautiful. So we have here one enemy, the first enemy, then we have second enemy, 3, 4, etc. These actually have numbers, so they actually correspond with a number. So every time, so it's gonna go 1, and then it will go through the list of enemies. So this is our list. This is our list, and then it will just get, okay, I'm gonna go for I is 1. So for the first enemy it will find here, and it will add a control to it. Then I will be done +1, so then I will turn into 2. So then it will attach a control to this enemy, and then 3 will go to this enemy till it has done all of them. In this case 6, for example, and then it will just stop. So it will just go through the list of all the enemies in my scene, and it will attach a controller to the enemy with the number, for example 1. So in this case, this one, it will just go for the first enemy and will attach a control to it. Okay, let's see if it actually works. It won't, because this isn't called for. So I kind of want to do this every single frame. So I'm gonna go to my update function, and I'm gonna add 2 enemies, and I'm gonna hit play, and I'm gonna wait, and it doesn't work. Actually, it doesn't for a reason, because it spawns on top of this building over here. So it's not gonna work. So I'm gonna change the X and Y locations to like 100 and 100. Then I'm gonna spawn them. Let's see if it actually spawns them, and there they go. There's 1, there's 2. It will just keep on going forever and ever. So every time one enemy spawns, it will go through this list again and attach a control to that certain enemy. So, for example, number 4. Oh, this one. It will just keep on going. In this case, it will just keep on going forever and ever and ever. You can also set this one, for example, to 10. So, a number 10. Then it will just spawn 10. It will just do this 10 times. But in this case, we want to go through the list of all the enemies. So it just spawn the enemies every 2 seconds. I'm going to change this to 5, otherwise it's going to be ridiculous. You can also set it to 1. It's just, let's just do, I don't know if it actually works. 0.1, there you go. So it now spawns them every 0.1 second. And now it actually gets stuck. That's cool. So let's not do that, so let's do something like 5, okay? So it spawns enemy every 5 seconds. See if it actually works this time. Wait for it. Wait, that's 1. And it just keeps on going 5 times. Let's do 3, otherwise it's gonna be boring. Okay. So 3 of them. So every 3 seconds it will spawn an enemy. Okay, there you go. Perfect. Right now the enemies are patrolling. You can also set them to, like, for example, chase, if you want to. So you can actually change this to chase, for example, or evade, patrol, or move. In this case, I'll just set it to patrol. Okay. So what we kind of want to have to happen is that when I hit an enemy, I lose health. That'd be cool. Okay, the first thing we need to do is declare that the player has health. Right now it doesn't have health, so I'm gonna type here health. I'm gonna give it like 100 health, something like that. So now the player has exactly 100 health, and then it can actually, that can be reduced by 1 or 2 every time you hit an enemy. So how do you check that the enemy actually hit you? Well, you can do it by adding a trigger to your enemy. So every time the enemy hits you, it triggers a function, and that function can be that 1 health is being deducted from your total health. So when we go to our bushel, for example over here, you can actually add a trigger to it by just clicking on the plus. You can actually type in trigger, and then let's call it byte. So now this object has a trigger called byte. You can actually also do it to the actual spawning of the enemies. You can say it here, byte. So every time an enemy spawns, it spawns with a trigger called byte. That name corresponds with the function, in this case byte. There you go, byte. So every time it spawns the function called byte. And in that byte you can have a target and a source. The source is the bush, and the target is what it will hit, if that makes sense. So for example, we can now actually deduct health from our player by saying, for example, that every time the player hits the bush, it bites, and that it will have 1 health deducted. So let's do just that. So I want to say here, if our target is equal to our player object. Oh, you don't actually need to do brackets. Oh. Then do something. So if our target, if the object that our bush hits is the same as our player object, then I want it to do something. An if statement is nothing more than a question, so if something happens, what should I do? In this case, I want 1 health to be deducted. So you can say here, for example, player.health. Did I just do it capital? Oh, no. .health is player.health minus 1. So the health is being deducted every time the bush hits our player. Let's also make sure that we can actually display our health in our HUD. You can actually do that very simply by, I'm going to create a function do HUD, just a bit neater. So I'm going to say do HUD, and I say here, going to say HUD.health and then player.health, and let's do this in the update function. Okay, there you go. So now I can see it has health of 100. Let's spawn a bush. If I can actually get hit would be cool. Oh, there's 1 health being deducted. Let's see if I can get more. Oh, okay. Let's do the speed of the enemies a little bit slower so we can actually hit. See what happens. Let's hit it. Out slowly. But now you can see that every time I hit it, I lose more than 1 health. So now I'm down to 92. 87. So it's not really that helpful. This way you'll die extremely fast. So we want to avoid that our health is being deducted like more than by 1 every second, for example. So in our byte, we need to check that this player has been hit, and if so, then we need to pause the hitting, for example, for like a second, so he can actually catch his breath. Let me put it that way. So in my player table, I'm gonna add here been hit. In this case, I'm gonna set it to false by default. So with this one, we can check if has our player been hit by a bush or not. Okay, so in this case it's set to false. So let's go again to our byte, and then we can say here if not, so if it's false, player being hit, then, and let's set it here to end. So what this does is just ask question, okay, has our player been hit or not? If not means if it's false, and this means if it's true, and this means if it's false. So if it's false, then we can we can deduct 1, and then we can say here player being hit is true, so the player has been hit. But by doing this, we also have to make sure that it actually gets set to false again. Otherwise, what's the point? And it will always be true forever and ever and ever. That's not really that helpful. So in here, I'm gonna make a new function. Can be hit again, for example. And in here, I'm gonna set the player being hit to false again. False. Okay. But we should call this function in a way. So I'm gonna create a timer here. This should actually be there. So I'm gonna create a timer. Timer. Dot start, and that will set this again after like a second. So I'm gonna type here can be hit again after 1 second, and I don't want it to loop. So what's happening here, that it will first check that if the object that the push is hitting is the actual player, and if the player has not been hit yet, then we can deduct 1 health, then sets it to true, sets the player hit to true, and then starts a timer again, and that will set it to false again. So after 1 second, the player can be hit again. Otherwise, your health will just drop down like a fly. So after 1 second, the player can be hit again. So the player will be immune for 1 second each time he has been hit. So let's check it, see if it actually works. So see, it actually should work. 89, 98, that's 1, 97. See, you don't lose health that quickly anymore, which is exactly what we want. So this is more of a fail-safe, that you don't lose a million health in one second. Cool, pretty easy so far. Now, would also be cool if we have some music in there, right? In the default, there is actually some music in there. It's called music.mp3. I kind of want to play it, just for the fun of it. And the question is, do I want to play it every single frame, or do I want to just play it once? Well, I'm hoping that you agree with me that you just want to play it once, not every single frame. So I'm gonna create a new table. It's called audio. So I'm making a box audio in which I can put multiple things in, like the music.mp3, but also like the alert, or the bump, or the byte. So we can actually have multiple things in there. So first thing I'm gonna do here is gonna call it music, and I'm gonna set it to nil. So it's still undefined, because I'm gonna define it in the start. So in the start function here, I'm gonna say audio.music is sound.load music.mp3, and okay. Then we have some more options here: bool looping and bool streaming. Looping, well, that's pretty obvious, but streaming, for example, the streaming is really helpful when you want to load it in a giant file, like for example this music. What it does, it just loads in parts of it and not the entire song at once, so it's a bit more efficient than just loading it in its entirety. So first thing, do I want to loop it? Yeah, sure, I want to loop it. And do I want to stream it? I kind of want to stream it because this is a big file, so I want to stream it part by part. Okay, so it's now loaded, and now I want it to play. So down here, I'm going to say sound.play, and then I'm going to say audio.music. Let's see if it actually works. Might take a while. There it goes. Don't know if you can hear it, but I can definitely hear it. Cool. Oh, that's nasty. Okay, so that works. But also kind of funny that if we bump into something, we play a sound. That would be funny. So the first thing I'm gonna do is add a new variable in my audio table that's gonna call bump. It's also gonna be nil because I don't know what it is yet. So then in my start function, I'm gonna say here's audio.bump is sound.load this case it's bump.wave, and then we get the same part again. Do you want this tiny bump to loop? And probably not. Do you want it to be streamed? Well, it's really small, so no. What's the point? So false, false. Okay, so now we have to make sure that when the player cannot move anymore, we play a sound. So in the player, we have to make a part where we can actually check that the player is not moving anymore, and that's done by this part here, the player controller. So just to make things a bit more neat, I'm going to create a new function that's going to be called toPlayer, and I'm actually going to move this part here to that function, and let's type this part in here. So it's still called upon, but just a little bit more neat, so a little bit more organized. So I can actually close these ones. Okay, so it will still work, as you can see, but just a little bit more neat. Okay, so we have this control WASD loaded into our moved variable, so which we can actually say check can our player move or not. And here we can say, for example, if not moved, then, so if it can't move, we want the sound to play. So I can say here sound dot play audio dot bump. So if the player can move, we want to play the audio bump. Let's play it. We get this. That's not really helpful, right? That just sounds, oh, that's even more annoying. So it's now played every single frame that we cannot move. Every single frame this sound starts playing. Well, that's really not what we want. So we want to check to see if we can do it differently. What we can do actually is we can check if the sound is playing or not. And if it's not playing, then we can play it again. And if it's playing, just don't play it. So we can check here if not sound, and actually says here is playing. And here I'm going to do bump played because it's asking for a sound channel. I'll get back to that later on. So I'm going to say bump played. Then bump played is sound.play audio.bump, and I should add one more end. First I'm going to check it. Okay, so it's a bit weird. Oh, one sec, this sound is annoying. So the sound is playing, checks for a audio channel. When I say sound.play, this is not an actual channel, but this is the sound playing. So, but when I put it in the bump played, it becomes an audio channel. So I should check for this one and not this, otherwise it will simply crash. Speaking from experience, so I just put my sound.play in a variable called bump played and check if that one is playing or not. Otherwise it will be very awkward, just like you heard. So now every time the sound has done playing, it will play again. So it will only play when the sound is not playing. We also have a byte.wave, so let's do the same thing here in our byte. So I'm gonna add a byte to my player audio table. So byte is nil. And again, same here, I'm gonna load it. So audio.byte is sound.load byte.wave. Again, it's a small file, so I'm gonna set everything to false. Let's go to our byte. So this part here. So if it's in here, so if a health is being deducted, I want the byte wave to play. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. So first I'm gonna check if it's not playing, then I can play it. So if not sound is playing, let's do this byte played. Then byte, oh, small letter, byte played is sound.play audio.byte. end. Let's see if it works. Let's hit a object. It actually works. No, that's annoying. So this is the basis of playing a sound. It's really not that hard. Once you know it, you're like, I can do this. I can do this. Pretty easy. So we've got this so far. It's not that difficult. Let's do something else. Let's do shooting. That would be cool. That would be cool. So under my update, I'm gonna do it under my player actually. Oh. At the end of it, I'm gonna create a function called player shoot and end it. Okay. So the first thing you want to check for, well, the thing about shooting is you actually have to push a button in order to fire something. So we're going to do that as well. We can check that by just checking for the if and then input get key. What this does is it asks for a ASCII number which corresponds with a key on your keyboard. So let's find the ASCII table. Let's grab this one, first one I get. Oh, let's check it. Okay, so for example, let's do spacebar, right? So when I check here, spacebar, and the decimal number is 32. So in here I can say if input get key is 32, so if it's our spacebar, we can fire. But if you, for example, want to change it to something like the M, the capital M, then it's 77. If it's smaller than the M, then 109, for example. So check out this ASCII table and see which one you want to use. So if our spacebar has been pressed, I want to fire an object. Firing is done by the level, so I'm going to say double.fire. Then it says the object parent, so what is shooting? Well, our player is shooting. The number ID and the string trigger. So, well, what is shooting our bullet? Well, it's our player, so I'm going to say player.object. Then it asks for the ID, so what image are we going to shoot? Well, we can shoot tacos, so let's shoot tacos. Let's shoot 47. And then we can add, for example, also a trigger, but I'm going to keep it for 0 for now. Okay, so let's test it, and now I'm going to hit spacebar. Nothing happens. Because we've forgotten to name something. It says it here, string name. Oh. So I'm gonna add the name bullet. Now it should work. Or not, because we actually don't call this function. I'm being an idiot. Let's go to update and let's do player shoot. Okay. We now can spawn tacos. Brilliant. It actually works. We spawn them, but that's pretty much it. Because actually for a reason. Couple of things. So we now shoot or respawn a bullet every single frame. I kinda don't want to be able to do that. Okay, that's just spamming. So we're gonna figure out a way to avoid that. And the bullets aren't actually moving. So what do we have to do? Well, first let's fix that we can fire every single frame. So same thing again. So I'm gonna add a variable to my player table. I'm gonna say able to fire. I'm gonna set this to true this time because we can't fire, right? So able to fire. Then in my object here, in my player shoot function, I'm gonna set it to false. So player dot able to fire is false. So after one time shooting, we can only shoot. Let's actually check it out. Oh, should not add that. So we can now shoot. Okay, we set it to false, but we actually haven't checked if we can actually fire. So up here in the if input get key, I'm going to type and player dot able to fire. So it now asks, have we pressed the spacebar and can our player actually fire? If so, shoot. So I can now fire just once. I can spam spacebar, but it doesn't do anything. It's so annoying. So there you go. So it's now set to false, but we have to set it to true again. So after a certain amount of time, we have to start it again. So timer does start. Let's call this player can fire. Let's do 0.5, and let's not loop it. So we're gonna make a function called player can fire. Player can fire, in which we just set the player able to fire to true. Able to fire is true. So after 0.5 seconds we can shoot again. We should at least. Oh, I should end it. Oh. That's annoying. Oh, that's crap. I fucked up. There you go. And now you see the importance of ending it properly. So player able to fire is true. And I did something wrong again. 118. We actually forgot an end somewhere. This is correct. And expected close function at 918. Let's put it all. I think I just forgot to close something. This is fine. Can't be hit again. Oh, this one doesn't have. Oh, we didn't close. Can't be hit again. Should be there. And this should be gone. There you go. Okay. That works. Okay. Cool. So we can fire, but we can't actually move the bullets yet. So we're gonna make a function called do bullets. That will just move the bullets. So in here I'm gonna say do bullets. There you go. And we're gonna do pretty much the same thing as with the enemies. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get all the bullets in my level. So get objects, in this case bullet. And then again for I is 1 hashtag bullets. So go through the list of all the bullets in our scene. Then we can actually make it go forward. So I'm gonna type here if not object dot forward bullets I with the speed of 2, then level dot remove object bullets I. Okay, so what this pretty much does is we go through all the list of all the bullets, and we can check if our bullet cannot move forward, so it hit an object, we're going to remove it. Otherwise the bullets will go on indefinitely and just keep on going. So we actually want to destroy them when they hit an object. We want them to stop moving. So let's check. Oh, I've forgotten. For I did something wrong here. Well, this should be a do actually. This should be a do. So let's check it. I'm going to fire taco. It's not moving. Because we don't call this function. Let's do it in update again. So in update, I'm gonna do bullets. There goes taco. So when it hits an object, it just stops. You can also add a trigger to your bullet. So then you can say if you hit an object, like we did in the bite, if you hit an object that is a bush, for example, or one of the enemies, you can actually add one to your score. I'm not gonna do it for you, because that would be too easy. Then you can just copy paste the entire game and get a good grade, so let's not do that. So this is the entire overview of our game and all the functions that we have. If something is unclear, come by our office and we can help you. But this is the basics of how to make a game in Lua. So I hope that this was helpful, and that you actually can make a good looking, awesome game. So I thank you, and I will see you guys next time.